Walk into any kitchen today and you will find a drawer stuffed with cling film, tin foil, and a teetering tower of plastic tubs that never keep their lids. Your Nan had none of it. She wrapped, stored and preserved food, with paper, cloth, and clever little tricks that kept things fresher for longer and cost almost nothing. Number 14 was quietly pushed out of modern kitchens for reasons that make no sense at all. And number 3, food scientists now admit, works better than the gadget you paid 40 quid for. Hit that subscribe button and let us count down. Number 25. Greaseproof paper for the packed lunch. Long before cling film wrapped every sandwich in the land, your Nan reached for a sheet of greaseproof paper off the roll that lived in the dresser drawer. She would lay the sandwich in the middle, fold the sides over like she was tucking in a baby, and crease the ends into neat little parcels. The clever part was that greaseproof breathes. Cling film traps moisture, so your cheese and pickle turns to a soggy tragedy by 11:30. Greaseproof let a whisper of air move, so the bread stayed springy and the crust kept its bite. A whole roll cost about £1 and lasted the best part of a term. She could wrap a fruitcake in it, line a tin with it, and still have enough left over for the fish on Friday. Nothing sweated, nothing spoiled, and nothing ended up in the bin. Number 24. Wax discs on the jam. When your Nan made a batch of strawberry or bramble jam, she did not slam a plastic lid on and hope for the best. She cut little waxed paper discs, pressed them wax side down directly onto the surface of the hot jam, and only then screwed on the cellophane top held with a rubber band. That disc did something modern lids cannot. It sealed the surface while the jam was still steaming, so no air pocket formed underneath, and no mold could ever take hold. A packet of discs cost twopence and did dozens of jars. She had jam from August sitting in the larder the following spring, still glossy, still perfect. Open a supermarket jar today and leave it a fortnight and you will find a green fur growing on top. Your Nan's method beat that without a fridge in sight. Number 23. Muslin for the cheese. Cheese is alive and your Nan knew it. Wrap it in cling film and you smother it, trapping the ammonia it gives off until it tastes like the inside of a Wellington boot. So she wrapped a wedge of cheddar in a square of muslin, lightly dampened, then set it in the coolest corner of the larder. The muslin let the cheese breathe while stopping it drying to a brick. She re-wetted the cloth every couple of days, and a lump of cheese that cost 9p lasted a fortnight without a single hard, cracked edge. A yard of muslin cost pennies and could be boiled clean and used again and again. Cheesemongers still wrap in cloth to this day, and there is a reason for that. Plastic is the enemy of good cheese, and your Nan understood that decades before the artisan delis started charging you for the privilege. Number 22. The damp tea towel over the dough. Every Nan who baked kept a proving trick that cost nothing at all. When the bread dough needed to rise, she draped a clean, damp tea towel over the top of the bowl and set it somewhere warm, on the shelf above the range or by the airing cupboard. The damp cloth stopped a dry skin forming on the dough, which is what makes a loaf split and tear rather than rise smooth and high. Cling film does the same job today, but a tea towel does it for free and can be flung in the wash after. She had that same tea towel wrapped round warm scones on the way to the WI, keeping them soft, and thrown over the top of a bowl of batter resting before the Yorkshire puddings went in. 1 square of cotton, a dozen jobs, and not a scrap of plastic used. Number 21. The brown paper bag for mushrooms. Bring mushrooms home in the plastic punnet with the film lid, leave them 2 days, and they turn to a slimy grey sludge. Your Nan never had that problem because she stored her mushrooms in a plain brown paper bag, the kind the greengrocer twisted shut at the top. Paper absorbs the moisture that mushrooms constantly release, keeping them dry and firm instead of letting them stew in their own damp. She kept them in the bottom of the larder, and a bag of mushrooms bought Saturday was still good for the Wednesday omelette. Modern advice from every food magazine now tells you to do exactly this: ditch the plastic and use paper. Your Nan was doing it in 1955 because the greengrocer never gave her plastic in the first place. What we call a clever hack, she called Tuesday. Number 20. Onions knotted in an old stocking. This is the one that makes people laugh until they try it. When the onions came in, your Nan did not pile them in a bowl where the bottom ones rotted unseen. She dropped one onion into the toe of an old nylon stocking or a pair of laddered tights, tied a knot above it, dropped in the next, tied another knot, and carried on up the leg. Then she hung the whole string from a hook in the larder. Each onion sat in its own airy pocket, none touching the next, with air moving all around. That airflow is what stops onions sweating and going soft. Hung up like that, they kept for months, right through the winter. She could snip one off below a knot whenever she needed it. A pair of holy tights that were headed for the bin became a storage system that beat any fancy vegetable rack. Number 19. Apples wrapped one by one in newspaper. First pattern break. Here is where a bit of hidden science creeps in. When the apples came off the tree or arrived by the box in autumn, your Nan wrapped each one individually in a sheet of newspaper before laying them in a wooden crate, never letting one touch its neighbor. It looked like a fiddly waste of time. It was anything but. Apples give off a gas called ethylene as they ripen, and that gas makes the apples around them ripen faster too, which is how one bad apple really does spoil the barrel. The newspaper wrapping trapped each apple's ethylene and kept it from spreading, while the paper soaked up any damp. Wrapped and stored in a cool shed, cooking apples from October were still firm and crisp at Christmas and beyond. Food scientists now sell you ethylene-absorbing sachets for your fridge drawer at a fancy price. Your Nan did the identical job with yesterday's Daily Mirror. Number 18. Butter kept sweet underwater. Before every home had a fridge, keeping butter from turning rancid was a daily battle, and your Nan won it with a trick that seems mad until you understand it. She packed the butter into the bottom of a glazed crock or a wide bowl, pressed it down firm, and poured cold, lightly salted water right over the top to cover it completely. The water sealed the butter off from the air, and it is air that turns butter rancid. She changed the water every day or two, and the butter stayed soft, spreadable, and sweet-tasting for a week or more on the warmest larder shelf. There are French butter dishes sold today for 20-odd pounds that work on this exact principle and get called a clever invention. Your Nan did it in a chipped pudding basin with a splash of salt and never thought twice about it. Number 17. Carrots buried in a box of sand. This one sounds like gardening, but it was pure kitchen wisdom. When root vegetables came in bulk, your Nan kept a wooden box of slightly damp sand in the cool of the shed or the coldest corner of the larder. She twisted the leafy tops off the carrots, brushed off the soil, and buried them in layers in the sand, making sure none touched. The sand held just enough moisture to stop the carrots going limp and rubbery, but not so much that they rotted, and it kept the light off them so they never sprouted or greened. Carrots stored this way stayed as crisp in February as the day they were pulled. Parsnips, beetroot and turnips got the same treatment. A box of sand cost nothing and did the job of a whole vegetable crisper drawer, only better, and without a scrap of plastic bag turning your veg to slime. Number 16. Eggs stored point down or hidden in water glass. Second pattern break. Now, here is proper preservation science your Nan knew by heart. Day to day, she stored eggs pointed end down in the rack because that keeps the air pocket at the top and the yolk cushioned in the center, which makes an egg last noticeably longer. But when the hens were laying hard in spring and going quiet in winter, she went further. She preserved surplus eggs in water glass, a solution of sodium silicate, packing them into a big crock and covering them completely. The water glass sealed every tiny pore in the shell, locking the egg away from the air, and eggs put down in April were still perfectly good for baking the following January. A tin of water glass cost a few pence and preserved dozens of eggs through the lean months. Today we call it food storage. Your Nan called it not going without a Victoria sponge in the winter. Number 15. The meat safe on the pantry wall. Before the fridge arrived, every kitchen had a meat safe, and it was a genuine feat of clever design. It was a small cupboard with sides made of fine zinc mesh or perforated metal, hung on the coldest, shadiest outside wall or in the deepest part of the larder. The mesh kept the flies and the cat out while letting cool air flow straight through, so meat, cooked joints and milk stayed fresh far longer than they had any right to on an open shelf. Your nan would drape a piece of damp muslin over a joint inside it, and as the water slowly evaporated, it actually dropped the temperature a degree or two, the same principle as a clay cooler. A meat safe cost a few shillings and lasted decades. We swapped it for a fridge and forgot that a well-placed meat safe kept things cool for free, humming away with no electricity at all. Number 14. Bread in the crock, wrapped in a cloth. Never, your nan would tell you, keep bread in plastic. A loaf sealed in a plastic bag goes soft, then damp, then moldy within days, because the plastic traps the moisture the bread breathes out. Instead, she kept her bread in an enamel or earthenware bread bin and wrapped the loaf itself loosely in a clean linen cloth. The cloth kept the crust from going rock hard, while the bin kept the air still and the light out. A loaf stored this way stayed edible and pleasant far longer. And even when it did start to firm up, it dried honestly rather than turning to fur. That stale end became bread and butter pudding or breadcrumbs, never waste. We now pay for expensive linen bread bags, marketed as the artisan way to keep a loaf. Your nan had the same result with a clean tea towel and a tin that came free with the biscuits. Number 13. Cloth rubbed with beeswax. Long before the eco-shops charged you £8 for a beeswax wrap, your nan made her own without ever giving it a name. She would take a square of cotton and rub it over with a block of beeswax, then warm it briefly by the range so the wax melted into the weave, leaving a cloth that was flexible, slightly tacky, and completely reusable. She used it to cover a bowl of leftovers, wrap a lump of cheese, or seal the top of a jug, molding it to shape with the warmth of her hands. When it got grubby, she wiped it clean in cool water, and it was ready again. It lasted a year or more before it needed a fresh coat of wax. The very thing being sold to us now as a cutting-edge, planet-saving invention was sitting in your nan's kitchen drawer, made from a candle stub and an old pillowcase. Number 12. Herbs stood in a jar like a bunch of flowers. Third pattern break, and it is such a simple one that people refuse to believe it works. When your nan brought home a bunch of parsley or a handful of soft herbs, she did not shove them in a bag in the salad drawer to turn black and slimy. She snipped the ends off the stems, stood the bunch in a jam jar with an inch of water in the bottom, and popped a loose paper or cloth bag over the top. Treated exactly like cut flowers, the herbs kept drinking and stayed green, fresh and perky for well over a week. The stems stay alive because they are still taking up water, which is the whole trick. Every food writer alive now tells you to do this and acts like they have discovered fire. Your nan did it with a rinsed-out fish paste jar on the windowsill and never made a fuss about it at all. Number 11. The cut onion, face down on a saucer. Half an onion left over from the cottage pie was never wrapped in cling film and left to stink out the whole fridge. Your nan simply laid the cut face flat down onto a small saucer or a clean plate and left it in the cool of the larder. Pressed against the china, the cut surface was sealed from the air, which stopped it drying out and stopped that sharp oniony smell tainting the butter and the milk. When she needed it, she picked it up, sliced off the very thin dried edge, and the rest was as good as fresh. No plastic, no smell, no waste. It works on a lemon half too, and on a cut apple. Such a small thing, but it saved the fiddle of wrapping and the horror of a fridge that reeks of onion for 3 days. Simple, free, and it worked every single time. Number 10. Runner beans salted down in a stone crock. When the runner beans came in a glut in late summer, faster than any family could eat them, your nan preserved them the old way, in salt. She sliced the beans, then packed them into a big stoneware crock in layers, a thick layer of beans, a good scattering of cooking salt, more beans, more salt, pressing each layer down hard as she went. The salt drew the water out of the beans and created a brine that preserved them for months without a freezer in the house. Come the depths of winter, she lifted out a handful, soaked and rinsed them well to wash the salt away, and cooked them like fresh. A crock of salted beans cost little more than a bag of salt, and gave the family greens long after the garden had died back. It is a lost art now, but it kept a family and vegetables through the coldest, barest months. Number 9. Hard cheese wrapped in waxed paper, then a damp cloth. For the everyday block of cheese, your nan had a 2-layer method that beat any plastic tub going. First, she wrapped the cheese in waxed paper, snug against the surface to stop it drying and cracking. Then she loosely folded a lightly dampened cloth around the whole parcel. The waxed paper protected the cut faces while the damp cloth kept the humidity just right and let the cheese breathe without going hard or sweaty. Kept in the cool larder, a wedge stayed in perfect eating condition for a fortnight, developing flavor rather than spoiling. This is very nearly exactly what proper cheesemongers do today with their special 2-ply cheese paper that costs a small fortune. Your nan achieved the identical result with a scrap of paper the butter came in and a bit of old sheet, and her cheese never once tasted of the fridge. Number 8. Wilted greens revived in a damp tea towel. When the lettuce or the cabbage started to droop and go floppy in the larder, your nan did not chuck it. She rinsed the leaves in cold water, gave them a shake, then rolled them up loosely inside a clean, damp tea towel and left the bundle in the coolest spot for an hour or two. The leaves drank the moisture back up through the cloth and came back crisp and lively, ready for the tea table. Stored this way from the start, wrapped in a barely damp cloth rather than a sealed bag, greens stayed fresh for the best part of a week without turning to that brown slime you find in a forgotten salad bag. A head of lettuce cost 6pence and was far too dear to waste. That damp cloth trick meant not a single leaf was ever thrown out before its time. Number 7. Culinary jars and the art of bottling. The culinary jar, with its glass lid, rubber ring and clip, was the beating heart of your nan's preserving. When plums, damsons, gooseberries or tomatoes came in cheap and plentiful, she packed them into sterilized jars, covered them in syrup or brine, and processed them in a big pan of hot water so the lids sealed with a satisfying pop as they cooled. Sealed like that, the fruit kept for a year or more in the larder, no fridge and no freezer required. A shelf of glistening bottled plums was a proper source of pride, and a jar cost next to nothing to fill from a hedgerow or an allotment glut. She had summer fruit on the table in the depths of January, long before anyone dreamed of flying it in from Spain. Those same jars are trendy again now, sold for storing pasta, but their real magic was locking a whole harvest away safe. Number 6. Potted meat sealed under a lid of fat. 4th pattern break. Controversy incoming, because this one horrifies the health brigade. When there was cooked meat left over from the Sunday joint, your nan turned it into potted meat that would keep for weeks with no fridge at all. She minced or pounded the meat fine, seasoned it well with pepper and mace, pressed it firmly into little pots, and then poured a layer of clarified butter or dripping over the top to seal it completely. That cap of fat set hard and locked the air out entirely, and it is air and its bacteria that spoil meat. Under that golden seal, the potted meat stayed good for a fortnight or more in the cool larder. Here is the bit that riles people. This is exactly how the fanciest French delicatessens preserve their pâté and rillettes today, calling it confit and charging accordingly. Your nan did it with the scrag ends of a beef joint and a knob of dripping and thought it entirely ordinary. Number 5. The vinegar bath for berries. Soft fruit was a small luxury, and it spoiled in the blink of an eye, going furry and moldy within a day or two. Your nan had a trick to make it last. When the strawberries or raspberries came in, she gave them a quick swirl in a bowl of water with a good splash of white vinegar, then drained them well and let them dry properly before storing. The mild vinegar killed off the invisible mold spores clinging to the fruit, the very things that turn a punnet of raspberries to mush overnight, and once rinsed and dried, the berries kept days longer with no vinegar taste at all. Food scientists have since confirmed exactly why it works, that a diluted acid wash knocks back the surface mold. Your nan knew none of the microbiology. She just knew her raspberries lasted till the weekend when the neighbors had gone off by Tuesday. Number 4. The string bag hung up for airflow. For anything that needed to keep dry and breathing, Your nan reached for a string bag or an old net, and she hung it up rather than setting it down. Oranges, lemons, a swede, a cabbage, or a bundle of shallots went into the netting and up on a hook in the cool larder, where air moved freely all the way around every side. Nothing sat pressed against a shelf, developing a soft, damp spot underneath, which is how fruit and veg usually start to rot. Hung and airy, they lasted far longer, and she could see at a glance exactly what she had. A string bag cost pennies and folded away to nothing when it was empty. We stack everything flat in plastic drawers now and wonder why the bottom of the bag has gone off. The answer your nan knew was simple: hang it up and let it breathe. Number 3. Celery and broccoli wrapped tight in foil. Fifth and final pattern break, and this one flies in the face of everything you would guess. Wrap a head of celery in cling film and it goes floppy and bendy within days. Wrap that same celery snugly in tin foil and it stays crisp and snapping fresh for well over a week, often 2. The reason is that foil lets the celery release the tiny amount of ethylene gas it produces, whereas the airtight cling film traps it and speeds up the wilting. The foil keeps the moisture in, but lets the gas escape, which is precisely the balance the vegetable needs. It works the same on broccoli and spring onions. This has been tested to death in modern kitchens, and the foil wins every time, comfortably. Your nan, who wrapped her celery in foil because it was to hand and cling film had barely been invented, landed on the best method going by pure common sense. Number 2. Newspaper as the original insulation. Newspaper did far more in your nan's kitchen than wrap the chips. It was proper insulation. She wrapped a hot loaf or a batch of just-baked pasties in several sheets of newspaper to keep them warm the whole way to the church fete or the picnic on the common, the paper trapping the heat far better than any foil. She lined the bottom of the vegetable rack with it to soak up damp and keep the potatoes from sprouting in the light. And of course the fish and chips came home wrapped in it, staying piping hot and steaming under the layers. Newspaper was free, it was everywhere, and it did a dozen jobs that we now buy special products for. Insulated cool bags and warming wraps sell for good money today. Your nan achieved the same thing with last week's paper and a bit of string, then used it to light the fire. Number 1. The cold larder and its marble slab. And at the very top, the crown of them all, the system that made every other trick possible. The cold larder with its marble or slate shelf. Built on the coolest north-facing wall of the house, the larder stayed several degrees colder than the rest of the kitchen all year round, and the thick slab of marble on the lowest shelf stayed colder still, cold to the touch even in high summer. On that slab, your nan kept the butter, the milk, the cheese, the cooked meats, and the puddings, and they held perfectly without a scrap of electricity. The slab absorbed and held the cold, the mesh vent to the outside kept the air moving, and the whole thing was a fridge that ran on nothing but clever building. Every wrapping and storing trick on this list worked because it worked inside that cool, dark, breathing room. We tore the larders out and plugged in a humming white box, and something quietly brilliant was lost. So there they are, 25 of your nan's food wrapping and storing tricks, and every one of them beats the drawer full of cling film and lidless tubs we struggle with today. Try just one this week. Wrap your cheese in a damp cloth, stand your herbs in a jar, or lay that cut onion face down on a saucer. Then tell me in the comments if your nan was right all along, because I promise you, she was.